Hello, I'm Kimberly and welcome to the Native News Update. It's Tuesday, December 6th, and many of the stories you hear here can be found at IndianCountryNews.com. And here's the news for the day from the Associated Press and other Native news sources. First Nations chiefs have gathered in Ottawa for a biannual conference that looks at health, education, land claims, residential schools, and governance issues. Assembly of First Nations Chief Shawn Atleo declared that the crisis gripping the community of Attawapiskat in northern Ontario is this country's moment of reckoning in its relations between First Nations and Canada. A day after Chief Teresa Spence and her band council asked a government-appointed third-party financial manager to leave, Atleo said he stood behind their decision. The federal government placed the remote James Bay community of 1,800 people under third-party management after the community declared a state of emergency in October due to its wretched living conditions. For at least the past 2 years, many residents have been living in unheated tents and shacks, some without running water. Spence has said it will take about $70 million to fix the housing situation in her community. In a historical move, the Yankton Sioux asked the White House to correct an obvious and still ongoing travesty of justice that started 17 years ago in 1994 on the Yankton Sioux Reservation in Marty, South Dakota. Yankton Sioux Chairman Thurman Cournoyer, who attended the 2011 Tribal Summit in Washington, alerted the Obama administration to the Rouse et al. Case to address the gross miscarriage of justice committed against his people. He hand-delivered the Yankton Sioux Tribe's resolution to the White House to highlight the outrageous civil rights violations against the Yankton Sioux Tribe's children and the actual innocence of the convicted men. The four men, Jesse Rouse, Desmond Rouse, Garfield Feather, and Russell Hebeling, have always maintained their innocence. All of the alleged victims have been screaming to deaf ears for 17 years that no crime was ever committed against them and that their testimony was coerced by the promise to return to their families.
We sat there for literally hours and saying, no, no, that never happened, no, they didn't do that, no, they didn't do that. And then finally, after hours sitting there, and then we just start saying yes to everything. And they told us, if you say yes to this, you'll get to go home.
The one I mostly remember is Dan Housebetter, because he had whatever tape recorder and sitting right across the table from me when they interviewed me.
I know Dan Husband, Mickey Tapkin.
When I testified, I started crying because I knew I was lying and I was scared that they were going to be mad at me, so I just started crying because I knew.
To watch the complete video from the victims, you can go to youtube.com/freedomforyankton4. A jury on November 30th awarded $150,000 in punitive damages to the family of a Ramapough Indian who was fatally shot by a state park ranger 5 years ago in Mahwah, New Jersey. With a 7-0 vote, the panel found that former police park officer Chad Walder's actions were malicious when he drew his gun and shot Emil Mann on April 1, 2006 during a confrontation near Ringwood State Park over ATV riding near Stag Hill. Lawyers for the Mann family said the finding was more significant than the size of the judgment. Jurors had already awarded $2.1 million in compensatory damages to Mann's family in a verdict on November 28th, ruling that Walder used unreasonable force. The Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux community gave grants totaling $260,000 to 6 organizations which largely serve Indian people. A grant for $150,000 to the National Indian Gaming Association will fund a Boys and Girls Club initiative in Indian country. A $25,000 grant to the Native American Rights Fund, which will fund a continued support for their legal efforts to protect the rights of tribes and American Indians. The Nebraska Educational Telecommunications Foundation for Television received a grant for $25,000 to create the Standing Bear website. The Minneapolis American Indian Chamber of Commerce received a grant for $25,000 to support fundraising efforts and program development. Women Empowering Women for Indian Nations received a grant for $20,000 for sponsorship of their annual conference. The Division of Indian Work in Minneapolis received a $10,000 grant for their food shelf, and the Native American Community Board received a grant for $5,000 for a food shelf housed at the Native American Women's Health and Education Resource Center on the Yankton Sioux Reservation. The White Earth Tribal Nation proposes that it be allowed to build a Twin Cities area casino, with proceeds going to help build a Minnesota Vikings football stadium. Tribal Chairwoman Irma Weisner said that the northern Minnesota tribe would build a casino in Arden Hills, with half of resulting revenues staying with the tribe and the other half going to the state. Those funds would entirely cover the public portion of the $1.2 billion stadium that the Vikings seek to build on the Ramsey County site. Weisner laid out a proposal that would have the tribe build a $700 million hotel and casino. The hotel would have as many as 500 rooms, and the casino would feature 150 table games and 4,000 slot machines. She said a casino of that size would generate $300 million a year in profits, to be evenly split between the tribe and the state. In return, she said that the tribe would expect that there would be a moratorium on other forms of gaming expansion until the tribe had paid off debt on the construction of the casino. Twilight Saga stars Kellan Lutz and Ashley Greene have taken to Twitter to release details on their first starring roles in the highly anticipated romantic drama A Warrior's Heart, which arrived in theaters and video on demand on December 2nd. The film not only stars Kellan Lutz and Ashley Greene from the Twilight Saga, but also Adam Beach from Cowboys and Aliens. Stars Kellan Lutz and Ashley Greene began tweeting about the film last week, which has caused an avalanche of interest in Twitter from Twilight fans. Within minutes of Kellan and Ashley's tweets, thousands of fans responded with their own tweets asking where they could see the film. On Friday, A Warrior's Heart arrived in both a 10-city limited release and a same-day video-on-demand release in approximately 100 million homes.
I'm going to bed.
You're not going anywhere, Connor Sullivan.
From this point on, you do not speak unless spoken to. Am I clear?
So where are we going?
The Six Nations work camp.
Why am I doing this?
You tell me. You're the one who screwed up.
It's hard to say if warriors are born or if they're made by circumstances.
Your dad played here.
I know everyone faces hardship in life.
And that's another roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. I'd like to thank you for joining me, and have a grand day.